What's up, guys? Chris Irvin, the ketologist, coming at you from Austin, Texas. This video is about ketone testing because everybody's doing it in the keto space, or at least everybody's talking about it. I think there's a lot of misconceptions, so I'm just going to touch on a few things that I think is very important when it comes to ketone testing. So for those of you who don't know, we can test our ketones through several different mechanisms. We can test them through our urine, we can test them through our blood, and we can test them through our breath. Personally, my favorite is blood ketone testing because I think it's the one that we have the most consistency, and we have a little bit more research showing that it is a pretty reliable marker of ketosis. So for those of you who have never done this before, you can use a blood ketone meter. I use a Keto Mojo meter, and you can prick your finger, you can take a sample of your blood, test it on the meter, and it will give you a result of your blood ketone concentration. And this is going to come back in millimolars, which is the unit of measurement that we typically use to quantify ketones in the blood. Now, the first question that people have is, what's the most optimal ketone range? What should I be shooting for? And the truth is, we don't know that. So if you look at research and you look at blogs, a lot of people will talk about 1.5 to 3.0 millimolars and things like that. The truth is, we really don't know what the optimal ketone range is because, one, it's so different for everybody, and two, we're not great at interpreting the results and how they change over time. So one of the things we see with ketogenic dieters is that when you first start a ketogenic diet, your ketone levels are typically pretty elevated. Your liver is producing a lot of ketones, and your body is not great at utilizing those ketones yet. So one of the things we know is that our cells actually have to upregulate transporters known as MCT transporters to allow ketones to be taken into the cell so they can be used for energy. Now, this doesn't happen right away when you start a ketogenic diet. So while you may have ketones present in the blood, you might not be very efficient at utilizing those ketones, which is going to mean that you have a higher ketone level in your blood. Now, over time, we become a lot more efficient at utilizing those ketones as we upregulate these MCT transporters, but we also become a little bit more efficient at producing only what we need. So we stop producing as many excess ketones, and which, both of those two things combined end up leading to lower blood ketone results. Now, the problem is like I said, we don't have a great way to kind of quantify this difference of what the optimal range is when you're starting a ketogenic diet versus when you're fat adapted and have been following it for a long time. So that's kind of one of the first reasons why we shouldn't be overly stressed about ketone levels, because we don't really know what the optimal range is, and it's going to be different for everybody, and it's going to be different for your goal. If you're using the ketogenic diet for therapeutic reasons, your optimal ketone level is going to be a lot different than somebody who's doing it for, say, weight loss or just to improve their health. So that's kind of the first thing that we need to point out there. Now, the second problem with ketone testing specifically, is that too many people take their ketone levels as the end-all be-all of health. The thought is that if I am in ketosis, then I am healthy. And that's just not true. And the reason why is because you get in ketosis from not eating, and you can get in ketosis from severely restricting your carbohydrates. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're healthy. If you're not eating and you're not putting any nutrients into your body, I wouldn't necessarily say that you're healthy. And if you are, you can be consuming a ton of very low quality, not very healthy, low carbohydrate foods that are going to allow you to get in ketosis, but that doesn't mean that your inflammatory markers aren't elevated or that your blood lipids are where that they should be. It just doesn't give you a full picture. So these are kind of the big reasons why ketone testing should not be the sole focus of success for you on a ketogenic diet. There's so much more to it. It's just a small picture of your health. Now, the problem with this is that this understanding that ketone levels isn't the most important thing has led many people to kind of go the other direction and say that, they overcorrect in the other direction and say ketone levels don't matter at all. It's just not something that we need to test. It's not you're not looking at the big picture here when you're looking at ketone levels. And that's not necessarily true. Just because something doesn't give us the full picture of our health, it doesn't mean that it doesn't give us a piece of the puzzle. And ketone levels do give you a piece of the puzzle. So, and I think the biggest reason why we should be testing our ketone levels is because of the glucose ketone index, or the GKI, which was invented by Dr. Thomas Seyfried from Boston College. So for those of you who don't know, the GKI is basically just a formula that we use that allows us to kind of combine our ketone levels and our glucose, and it gives us a number that we can use to kind of see the relationship between these two measures. So the first take home there is that testing your glucose is very important, probably more important than testing your ketone levels, but testing them together is even more important. And the reason why this is because One of the biggest reasons why a lot of people are following the ketogenic diet, whether you know it or not, is that you're looking to improve mitochondrial health. Now, so if you're following the ketogenic diet for weight loss, that means that you're probably overweight and you have a lot of weight to lose. And you have this excess weight because you're insulin resistant and you have poor mitochondrial health. If you are using the diet for any therapeutic reasons, whether that's like some of those neurodegenerative diseases out there like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, or maybe some of these metabolic disorders like cardiovascular disease or cancer, you're also trying to improve your mitochondrial function. If you are doing the ketogenic diet for health, guess what? You're also trying to improve your mitochondrial function, because our mitochondria, which are the powerhouses of our cell that are responsible for metabolizing nutrients and amongst other things, the health of those mitochondria are one of the biggest indicators of our overall health. If you have healthy mitochondria, then you're going to have a healthy body. And the problem is that we don't have a great way to assess mitochondrial health in real time. However, the GKI is actually one really great way that we can do this. So one of the things we know is that when our mitochondria they're metabolizing less glucose and they're metabolizing more ketones, we're going to be creating less oxidative stress on the cell. So this is going to be great for improving mitochondrial health and cell health in general. But we're also providing more energy to our cells. So for a lot of people who are suffering from like insulin resistance, metabolic disorders, like I said, neurodegenerative disorders, a lot of these are stemming from not having enough energy available to our cells. And one of the things we know is that when our cells are metabolizing ketones, we're actually providing more energy to those cells. So the GKI will allow you to see kind of the relationship of your glucose with your ketones to kind of give you a picture of how many ketones or how much ketones you are metabolizing. And this is going to be a much better indicator of your mitochondrial health, which is going to be a pretty good picture of what your overall health is. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, not the only predictor of our health that we should be looking at. There's so many other things that we should be looking at, like our C-reactive protein, our blood lipids, a lot of stuff like that that can give us a complete picture of our health. But the GKI is just kind of this one thing that we can look at to quantify our improvements in our health as we continue to follow the ketogenic diet. So besides our GKI, there's actually a couple other reasons why testing your ketones can be beneficial. One of them is that when you track them over time, you can start to see what your optimal ketone level is. So like I said at the beginning of the video, your optimal ketone level is going to be different. It's different for everybody. But you can start to see trends in how you feel at different ketone ranges. So for me, I noticed that I really start to see the cognitive benefits of keto when my ketones are between 1 and 1.5 millimolars. So for me, I can take that information and I can say, okay, if I'm going to be doing a lot of writing or a lot of researching or anything that involves me being very focused, I know that if I can get between 1.0 and 1.5 millimolars, then I can achieve that cognitive state. So if I, wake up in the morning and I'm getting ready to start deep work and my ketone levels are at 0.7, hey, maybe if I extend my fast a little bit or I incorporate some MCTs or exogenous ketones, I can boost my ketone levels up to the range where I know I just tend to thrive a little bit better. Same thing for if you want to test other foods and see how your body responds to other foods. Maybe for some people, having these foods impacts your GKI, it lowers your ketone levels, increases your blood glucose, despite it being a keto-friendly food. This is something that you can test when you're testing your ketone levels. Maybe you want to see how your body's responding to a different exercise regimen that you're doing. Maybe you're trying high intensity interval training and you want to see, am I producing more ketones after the exercise? Session's over. Am I setting myself up for greater ketone production the rest of the day? Maybe. So those are just things that you can test when you are testing your ketone levels, kind of the benefit of getting to do that. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, our ketone levels are not the end all be all of health, and we should not necessarily be chasing higher ketone levels unless there is a reason why we're chasing those higher ketone levels. Now, one of the things we know about ketone levels is that our brain takes up ketones in proportion to their availability in the blood. So that means that when we do have more ketones available, we are providing more ketones to the brain. Now, does that mean that you should be chasing higher ketone levels and want those ketone levels to be high all the time? No, because your brain doesn't always need these excess ketones. But in certain instances, like when you're trying to improve your cognitive function for something, maybe you have a big presentation or you're working on a big project or something like that, or therapeutically for some of these conditions where having more ketones available to the blood or to the brain through the blood can be beneficial. Those are times when maybe we can chase higher ketone levels. So those are just a few of the reasons why ketone levels are important. It's something that we should monitor. Now, before we wrap this video up, it's very important that I talk about establishing a good baseline ketone reading, for you to compare to as you continue testing ketone levels. So one of the things that we know is that there's so many variables that can impact your ketone levels, and we want to make sure that we limit those variables when we're trying to establish a baseline measure for us to compare to over time. So if you're testing the best way to do this is to test your ketone levels in the morning, but you want to wait till it's about 2 hours after you wake up, because when we wake up in the morning, we have a natural increase in our cortisol levels. It's part of our natural circadian rhythms, our wake-sleep cycle. But this causes our blood glucose levels to increase, and our blood glucose and our ketones typically work inversely of each other. So when blood glucose goes up, our ketone levels typically go down, and vice versa. So if cortisol is spiking your blood glucose in the morning, it's going to impact your blood ketone results. So you want to wait a couple hours after you wake up before testing. You also want to make sure that you don't have caffeine before you test, because this can also increase your blood sugar levels. And then you want to make sure that you haven't ate anything. You want to make sure that you haven't exercised yet. You want to make sure that you're well hydrated, and you want to make sure that you have your stress under control before you test your ketone levels. So if you're testing your ketone levels after sitting in the car on your way to work, you've been in traffic, you got a lot of stress, that's also going to skew your results. So you want to make sure to avoid that as well. Now, the purpose of testing under those conditions is that you're going to establish a good baseline measure that you can compare to over time. So when you want to test your body's reaction to different foods or different dietary protocols or different exercise regimens, you have something to compare to. So you have this good baseline. Now you can test your response to this food, or like I said, this dietary regimen, compare it back to your baseline and see these changes over time. It's also something that if you just want to track you becoming fat adapted over time, or track how your body's ketone levels are changing the longer you follow the ketogenic diet, doing this like once a week as a check-in will allow you to assess that. So that's it for this video, guys. I just kind of wanted to touch on ketone testing and just kind of go over some of the really important things I think that we should be considering with it. Like I said at the beginning of the video, not the end-all be-all of health, not something that we should be using as our primary indicator of success on a ketogenic diet, but that does not mean that it's not important at all. There's still a lot of value to knowing these numbers. There's a lot of value to just being able to see how your body is responding to the different things that you're throwing at it on a day-to-day basis. And self-experimentation is a great way to find out what works best for you. So that's it for this video, guys. If you liked this video or you thought it was useful, please share with a friend who you think could see some benefit from this. If you have any ideas of other videos and topics that you would like me to cover in upcoming videos, please let me know by commenting them below. Thanks.